Hi everyone and welcome back to part 2. So let's continue this tutorial. So what we can do next is make some array modifiers. So we can select our pillar and search array. And now we can just move it around. So on the x-axis to move it a tiny bit like here. Let's also make one on this arch here. So let's make an array modifier and we don't have to change it because it already fits perfectly. So go to 1 and we have to match it. So let's select the pillars and move this a bit more on the x-axis until it matches. To about here looks right. And we can make another arc, so let's make one more. And we have to make the ground a bit bigger, so let's select this face here and also this one by holding Shift and S and X to make it a tiny bit bigger. And also we can choose this one and make this also a bit bigger. And let's choose the pillars again and let's make one more. And next we can select our pillars again and we can just duplicate it and rotate it under 90 degrees on the z-axis and let's move them. And as you can see, these are not enough, so we can make a couple of more of them. So 9 is good, and we can also scale this one here a bit more up. So let's go to Edge Select and select it and just make it a bit longer to something like here. Now it is good. And now we can just move these pillars around, something here. We can also make it to something like this. And let's select this ground and we can make this face a bit longer too. And let's select this arch and Shift D, R is here 90. And we can move it again, so let's move it again to this pillar here. And let's match it, go to 3. Let's move it a tiny bit more on the y-axis. Now we can make one more arch here, so maybe 6 is enough, or even one more. To about here is good, and we can make more arches, so let's make more. So 6 is fine, and we can select just this and these ones and move it to the other side. So let's copy it and move it to the other side. And what I just noticed is that we need one more here, so we can just select them and select these and just move it in this corner here, and also one more here. And let's select the ground again and let's scale it. And let's scale it again on the x-axis, so S and X. Just until it matches these pillars here. And now we can move them again. So let's go to 1 and let's move it on the x-axis to match it until here. So this should be fine and we can move on. Let's select this pillar and delete it, and we can move these a bit to the other side and select them and let's move them around to here. And now we can make some more, so let's make the array modifier a bit and select these arches again and make some more. And we can also move these ones here, and let's select these ones and move them more on the x-axis until it matches these ones here, so G and X. And now it is perfectly aligned, and we should also copy these ones first and move them around. And we can make it a bit bigger. So let's select these ones and let's copy them and move them over to see if they fit. And we can select these objects here and let's apply our array modifier, Ctrl A to apply it. And then we select this upper object and Ctrl A to apply the modifiers. And we can select these both and Ctrl J to merge them, so we have one object. And now we can also make an array modifier here, so search array. And let's make this x-axis a bit bigger until it matches. And we can copy this again and RX90 and move them over on the x-axis. And let's choose them again and let's crank the array modifier a bit up. And we can copy it to the other side, so Shift D, and let's just copy them, place them. And now we can move on to these ones in the back, so this should be pretty easy. So we can just copy these ones. And let's make these ones here first. So Shift D, let's copy them also and move them over. And we can make one more so it fills this gap here. And we didn't apply it for this one, just so let's select them and apply these modifiers first, and also join these ones here. And now we can just select these objects here, all of these objects by holding Shift, and we can just copy them to the other side, so Shift D and just copy them and move them around here and match them on the Y-axis. And let's make one more, so to fill this gap here. And next we can just copy some more, so let's copy these ones here. So select them and select these ones, Shift D, and let's move them around to around here. And now we don't need these ones here, so we need two less. So let's make two less and move them on the Y-axis. So let's move them around somewhere here. And let's select them again. And we have to fit it to the other ones, so we can just move them over to about here, just roughly matching it. So this should be good, and we can move on. So we can just again select these ones here by holding Shift, and let's duplicate it, go to 7, and let's move them over until these ones here. So let's move them a bit so it should match. And again, let's copy these ones here, Shift D, and move them to around here. We can go to 7 to see them a bit better, and we don't need these ones here. And also one here is too much, so we can make one less and move it. So now I think we have everything. Also we can make one here less, but I think this should be fine. And now we can make these upper ones here, so let's make them. First let's create a ceiling here. So select this ground, Shift S, cursor to selected, Shift A and plane, and scale it up. And let's make it to this top here, to about here, and let's scale it to match it to the other parts, so X-axis, and a tiny bit less on the Y-axis. And here it is still a bit too much, so we can move this here. And once we have that, we can go to edit mode, select everything and go to 7, and we can just insert it. And let's go to the wired view so we can see it better. And what I noticed now is we forgot one here, so let's name this ceiling and hide it. So let's just select these ones here and copy them and move them over. Again to 7, and let's match it. And we can leave this one here open and just copy one again and move this over. Now it should be fine, and we can bring the ceiling back and select it. And let's go back to our wired view, and so we can see it. And let's match it this inner rectangle here, so let's scale it down and let's scale it a bit on the Y-axis. So about here should be good, and we can select this face and delete it. So now we have the ceiling here, and we can also give it some thickness, so let's do that. So solidify modifier in the other direction, so just a tiny bit. And what we can do next is just go to 1 and X-ray mode and select all of these parts here. But not these ones on the stairs, we don't need these. So if we have all of these parts selected, we can go to 1 and just copy them. So let's just copy them and move them up and hold Control. And let's just move them up, so something like here. And just move it down. And we can select the ceiling again, and we can select these edges on the inside by holding Alt and clicking them, and S and Shift and Z. And we also have to close these gaps here, so let's close them. So Shift D and move these over like this. So here are no gaps, so this should be fine. Here's one gap, so we can close this as well. So let's make one more, and now it's fine. And don't forget to save your file. And we can also add one ceiling up here, so let's select this ground here, Shift D, and just move it up. Something about here, and now the structure is finished, and we can move on to the materials. And we can also add this little moon here. I think it looks pretty nice and cute. So let's open a new window, and T to hide this menu and the overlays. And let's add a camera, so Shift A and camera, and Alt and R to reset the rotation, R, X and 90, and Control and 0. And now we can just move it a bit around, and also the focal length. And let's go to our material preview. And what I found looks better is if we go here, you can change the resolution a tiny bit. So you can make it a bit bigger on the Y-axis, and we have a bigger picture like this. And now we can add this moon, so we can just make a Shift A, mesh, and let's open a circle. and go to toggle view by pressing slash. And let's delete the circle and open a new one. And let's change the number of vertices back to 32. And let's rotate it by X, so RX90, and go to 1. And we can select these vertices here and delete them, so X and vertices. And now you can see it is almost like a moon shape. And next we can convert it to a curve, so right click, convert and curve. And now we have these curve properties down here, and we can come to geometry and bevel, and then you have this depth here, and you can crank it up a bit to maybe a 0.25 is fine. And now we have to make these corners here a bit smaller, so let's go to edit mode, and we can select these corners here, and we can go to our proportional editing, and then we're gonna press Alt and S, and then we can make this smaller, something like here. And we can turn off our proportional editing and select these and then make it smaller by Alt and S. And we can also fill the caps, something like this is fine. And we can convert it back to a mesh. So right click, convert to a mesh, and select everything in S and Y to make it thinner. And now we have a beautiful looking moon, and we can go back and let's make it bigger so we can see it better. You can also place it down here, or you can make it up here, however you like. And we can also rotate it on the y-axis, so maybe rotate it a bit. And now we can make a material for this moon, so let's go down here. And we can select the moon and press new and name it moon. You can also make a round moon if you like, you don't have to make this shape. So let's make cursor to select it, and we can make a second one. Just so that you have more options, RX90. Go to edit mode and let's get it up and just fill it, and that's it. And we can create a new one and select this and Ctrl L and link materials, so we can compare what looks better. We can also go to our shading viewport so we can see it on the rendered view. And now we can give it a little bit, tiny bit of color, and go to emission and make the emission to 1. And then we can choose a color ramp. So color ramp, and plug the color into the alpha. And then we can choose a gradient texture and plug the factor into the factor. And here you can already see we have some gradient going on. So we can move a tiny bit inwards, and we also can make this color a bit brighter. So maybe something like this is fine. And we can make one more. So we have a little bit more gradient going on. A tiny bit darker than the other one. And we can choose B-spline, then it looks much better. So to something like this, I think looks good, and we can make the brightness a bit more up. So this should be fine. You can either choose in the round one or this one. And what we also can do is add another color ramp. And we can move the color into the strength. And now we can make a noise texture. And move the color into the factor. And now you can see it looks much more like a moon, and then you can make value that you like. I think this looks pretty good, and we can leave it at that. Just choose one that you like. I will choose this one here. And as you can see, the other ones don't have this same material. So let's just select everything but not the moon. And then we can select an object that has the material, so this pillar here for example. So then you see it has an orange outline. It means it is the selected object. And we can go Ctrl L and link materials. And now we see that every object has the same material applied, and we can move on. And here we can see it is black because it means the objects are intersecting with each other. So we can select this object here and move this wall a bit more on the Y direction. So G and Y. So this should be much better. And now we can move on to the lighting. So for that, let's go to the world, change it to world. And let's go here and select this yellow dot, environment texture, and let's open your environment. You can find the HDRI that I choose in the description. I choose the Kloppenheim 07 Pure Sky, and as you can see the moon is not bright enough, so we can change it also. So let's change it. So let's unplug it, and we can move the strength up, and you can move the color into the color, and then we can change the strength again, something more up. So something like a 10 is good. And we can make Ctrl B so we can just see the section here. And we can move the camera a bit more around and make it bigger so we can see it. So let's move it a bit more in. and we can rotate it a bit on the x-axis. And let's change the strength of the HDRI so we can make it a bit brighter. And you can either leave it like this or you can rotate it on the z-axis. So let's select this node and Ctrl T, and we can rotate it on the z-axis, so rotate it a bit until you find something that you're happy with. I think this looks pretty nice. And now we have to add a sun, so let's add a sun. So Shift A and light sun, and let's rotate it on the y-axis, so R and Y. Let's change the brightness, so let's change it to something like 6 or maybe even a 7, and let's rotate it until we find something that we like. Maybe something like this, so move it more on the y-axis, and you can change the brightness a bit more. You can either choose plants or you can choose water if you like. So for the plants, what I did is select the ground, go to edit mode, select everything, and let's subdivide it a couple of times. Go back and we can go to our white paint, and we can paint the areas where we want the flowers to grow, so maybe some here. And now you see we have this group here, so we can name it flower 1. And what we can do next is we can go to our Blender kit and search flowers and click this little eye here and 3 first. And what I choose in this picture here are these flowers, so we can select them. But let's first select other ones, and you can also choose these ones or these ones here. So what I choose are like these little flowers here, so we can move them inwards. And next we can choose again the ground, and we can go to our particle system and add a new one and go to hair, and then scroll all the way down to your vertex group and choose the density of flower 1. And as you can see, we have some small objects here. And now we have to go to render and select collection and change it to your group, so your flower, and then pick random and object rotation, and then we can scale it a bit more up. Here you can see we have some flowers growing. And then we can give it some random object rotation, so it has some variety. Something like this should be good. And now we can choose another flower. So let's go back to this eye here. And we can choose another flower, maybe these ones, or these ones are also pretty nice. So we can also change it to flower 2. And then we can go back to this ground and make another white paint. And let's go to this object data properties and make another one and name it flower 2. And then just paint random areas where you want the flowers to grow, so maybe here or something here. Just random variations, but keep in mind that they shouldn't be growing in this ground here. And now we can go back to this particle system and add a new one, go to hair again, the same process. And again change it to collection and your flower 2 collection. And let's go down to density and let's change it to our group, so the flower 2. And now we can scale it way up, so let's scale it. And also pick random, so we have random variations. And we can scale it a bit more, and random scaling also. So then it can look something like this, and I don't really like how these flowers are looking, so I will change it to another one. And we can also add some trees if we want, so we can go here to Asset Browser and we can go to our plant library. You can just download it for free on the Blender Market. So we can come here to tree, and now we can just choose something that we like. So maybe this one here, just move it in. And be careful to not choose your flower collection, so you have to move it into your collection. And now we can scale this tree way up, and here you can see it. So it grows nicely into the scene. This tree here looks also pretty nice. And we can scale it a bit. Or we can make it without trees, I think it looks good enough. So we can just select the trees and delete them. And now it is pretty much finished, and we can move the sun a bit more around and the camera. So just a bit adjusting here and there until you find something that you like, so we can move this a bit more. So let's rotate it more on the x-axis, a bit downwards. And once we are happy with how it looks and everything is in place, we can just render it. And for the render settings, I have it set to cycles. And for the samples, you can just choose 300 and denoise. And for the performance, just checking all these and persistent data. And for the color management, I have it to AGX and very high contrast. If you want it to be water instead of plants, you can just hide your particle system. cursor to select it, and we can simply add a plane and just move it down a bit. And for that we can just add a simple water shader. So we can go back to object and view and name it water. So let's go back to shading view and here to material view, and we can just bring the roughness all the way down and transmission all the way up. And now it looks already like water, and we can change the IOR to 1.333, and now it is much more like water texture. And then add a bump and connect it to the normal and the noise texture, and connect the color into the height. And now you see it looks much more like a water texture, and we can scale it a bit more up. And let's make the strength a bit down, more distortion or a little bit more detail. And we can also give it some color, so let's make some color, something like a blue color. And we can make it a bit darker if you want, so it has a different kind of mood. And now we can just press F12 to render it, or you can just go up here and render image, make some more vibrance. And you can also give it a different tint if you want, something like greenish or more like a purple. And we can give it a tiny bit more contrast. And let's bring the smooth a bit more up. And what I found with the glamour, it looks very dreamy, so you can put it all the way up or just a tiny bit, and it gives like a nice effect, something like 30. And let's compare it. So now it looks much better. And that's it for this tutorial. I hope you could learn something, and please leave a like and subscribe to my channel. And you can also comment below what you want to see next. And thank you for watching, and I see you in the next one. Bye!